guys, I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH-LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'll stand on this statement that it's a good morning. Now, certainly there are challenges, and it could be a bad morning for some people. But let's try to just focus on the good, and not only just focusing on the good, but making the good good. And to be more specific, this show is really devoted to how we can continue to make the good good. And the good is, in this case, is public health, your sisters, your brothers, the world's health, global health for that matter. But we're focusing just on Connecticut today. And again, WNHH 103.5 FM, we're based here in New Haven, but we've really been blessed through Paul Bass's leadership to have a low power station, but also it's meaning that you can hear it through your radio in the New Haven, Hamden area, but you can also listen to it worldwide through the internet. And so that's been really a great blessing. Today we have 4 public health directors, and for me, it's a historic and historic moment to have 4 major city administrators and sojourners, I should say, collectively on this show. I have to really thank very quickly Maritza Bond, and Maritza is the health director for the city of New Haven, but she's been kind enough to recruit some of her peers, and I really want to thank all of you. So Ebony Jackson Shahid is with us, Aisling McGugan, and Dr. Elizabeth Rodriguez. Ebony is Director of Health and Human Services for the City of Hartford. Aisling McGugan is the Director of Public Health in the Waterbury Health Department. And Dr. Elizabeth Rodriguez is the Director of Health and Social Services for the City of Bridgeport. One theme that I mentioned to, or enticement that I mentioned to Maritza, was to have her peers to address the proposed mental health ban. The Food and Drug Administration proposed menthol ban in terms of cigarettes. But also, it just occurred to me when we do this show that there's so many issues that public health people are involved with, your constituents, your staff, and to give you a chance for, say, everyone to kind of talk for 6 minutes or so, a little bit about your origin story, but also about why you're doing what you're doing, and even just more importantly, partnerships that you might need, people you might need. How can we all just, yes, you're getting paid for your job, but everyone needs to kind of help make this public health, not just for this generation, but for future generations as well. Dr. Rodriguez, I wanted to kind of perhaps start with you as the Director of Health and Social Services of City of Bridgeport. And I just want to mention that if anyone has to run, if some other emergency comes up, I certainly understand, because you guys are in the emergency responder business. People think of police and fire, but you're in the emergency responding business also, and folks don't really appreciate that. So Dr. Rodriguez, welcome, and kind of share a little bit again about your background, your passion, your challenges, and address a little bit your thoughts about cigarettes and smoking cessation, et cetera.
Sure. I actually am a registered nurse by definition. I started in a nursing career, ended up in public health, which I've loved. I left, I worked academia, and I was the chief operations officer for one of the federally qualified health centers. But public health called me only because I was born and raised in the city of Bridgeport. I've seen where we were, where we're going, and where I hope for us to be in the future. And, you know, when we talk about this menthol ban, I've had friends, unfortunately, who smoked, had cancer, may no longer be with us. And just seeing today how the tobacco industry is marketing it to our younger generation is really, really alarming, because there's such a vulnerable population, right? And it usually is targeted to the African American and the Latino population, because, you know, we do face a lot of challenges, whether they're the social determinants of health or just the high level of stress of where we live, our environment. And so for the tobacco industry to kind of prey and target on that is really, really disconcerting, because, you know, I don't care what you say that the menthol is more palatable, that it makes it taste better. It's still nicotine. It's still something that's addictive, that causes consequences to everyone's body at some point in the future, right? And unfortunately, the younger you start smoking, the longer you will stay. My mom historically started when she was 14 years old and didn't stop smoking till her 40s when she ended up having surgery with her gallbladder back in the day.
Mm.
But it was a long time and it was regular cigarettes. Today, you know, their marketing is menthol that it makes it taste better, it looks nicer, it doesn't smell like the cigarettes. They're making it an e-cig and vaping. So many different opportunities, unfortunately, to begin smoking. And so, how can we combat that, right? And so, working with my esteemed colleagues, we're all in the same idea of what can we do as a community, because it can't just be public health, as you mentioned, right? It's really the partnerships not only within your community but outside of community, because disasters don't happen just within your own jurisdiction walls. It go and it crosses every border. And I think part of that is really building grassroots efforts, and really also, at least for me, and I can't speak for my colleagues, but I'm looking at it as how can I begin to get my youth services bureau really involved, right? Starting where the kids are and bringing evidence-based curriculum and training to say, while this might look pretty, let me tell you the real consequences. Let me tell you how secondhand smoking affects your asthma, it affects your family, you know, who in your family has smoked in the past and what are their medical conditions. Because to me, if we can get them young enough, and not just middle school, early school, begin to identify and train them about what happens when you smoke, can eventually help them teach the parents, because again, depending on the level of education, sometimes they may not understand the consequences. And so starting from where the children are to get to the parents, but then also targeting the middle and the high schoolers who are going into college, who are kind of facing stress and challenges. Because I'll admit, when I was in college and nursing school, I worked full time, went to school full time, I smoked. I smoked during my midterms and finals because I needed that stress relief, right? And then once I passed nursing, I realized, what am I doing to myself? This is making this worse, right? So looking at all of that and trying to develop curriculum and training opportunities to really teach this youth as well as the adults is really something that I'm looking forward to do with my colleagues and well as others who want to participate. But it's reaching out to the community because we can't do it alone.
And indeed, that's why we're here today. And this, and hope allow me to say this is not going to be a one-off. I hope to kind of bring you guys back or share, just talk with some of your colleagues. I've already asked Maritza for one of her new employees to talk to him, who's involved with substance abuse reduction, but I got the response that he's too busy to talk to me, Maritza. But I understand that he's
Listen, his job is to be on the grounds doing that work.
Yeah, I understand.
You can talk to me.
All right. Well, that's an esteemed pleasure. Ebony Jackson Shaheed, let's go to you and kind of share, and then as everybody will have a chance to kind of chop it up, as they say, after we kind of give the introductory kind of remarks. How are you doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
Good.
How are you? So I am a neuroepidemiologist by trade. My background is really in research for neurological disorders. So I started out in research, although I had many, many different jobs before really coming into public health. And I think that honestly shaped, who I was and gave me some of the expertise to move forward with public health. But previously, I also was a health education teacher. I also worked in the behavioral health sector as well, along with some maternal child health when I lived in New York. But I am born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut. I just wanted to put that out there that I am from Connecticut. And New Haven was my stopping ground, graduated from Hill House High School. So I wanted to put that out there too, a product of public school. Just letting people know that people raised in Connecticut and going to public school can do great things. But, to be honest with you, talking about the importance of this ban and, how it will affect our population at large, this thing goes back, way back, especially for, the marginalized population, African-American community, those minorities. And to be honest with you, I think it's about time that we put extensive efforts towards, banning menthol, in urban areas. And I think, while I was reading studies, preparing for this particular interview, I spoke to my father and my grandfather. My grandfather was a longtime smoker. He started when he was 12 years old. And stopped when he actually had a stroke.
Mm.
So I spoke to him about why did he smoke, as well as my dad. And I asked my father, did you smoke cigarettes? He said, no, I was into something else perhaps. But I asked him what brands, did you
Mm.
remember at that
Mhm.
time? And my dad grew up in the 60s and 70s. He said, oh, I remember Newport,
Mm.
and I remember also Cool.
Mhm.
And so, it was interesting because remembering those two brands um, was exactly in line with the marketing at that time towards the Black community. And so a lot of these tobacco, companies, really what they did was they researched and they did studies and
Mm.
they did focus groups um, to look and see how they could target the African American community. And menthol was associated with healing. Culturally, African American and Latino groups used menthol related products as healing products. And so targeting specifically these groups of individuals to say, hey, this product, which they know, has terrible, side effects as and making it and advertising it as though it has health benefits was completely detrimental. In
Mm.
the African American community right now, we all know that smoking and alcohol is at the root of a lot of those diseases, such as heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes. So this is really important. Moving forward for our community. I think that it's about time that we, start loosening ties with some of these companies that purposefully targeted, this community and is continuing to do it through some of the new products, the
Mhm.
vaping products,
Mm.
target, making these products seem as though they are healthy products, knowing that they continue to be addictive. And so yeah, I think it's just about time, and I'm ready to definitely support any efforts to get this going.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Aisley McGuckin, Director of Public Health, Waterbury Health Department.
Good morning, everybody. So good to see my friends. So my journey to public health started way back when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Madagascar. I was an agroforestry volunteer, so I was doing a lot of beekeeping and compost teaching and intensive rice farming and stuff like that. But on the side, I was doing kind of one-on-one consultations with the ladies in my village who wanted to figure out, how to avoid getting pregnant again and again and again. So talking about birth control, talking about, body safety, talking about decision making and negotiating sex instead of just kind of walking into it. And that really inspired me to go to public health school when I came home from the Peace Corps, and went to public health school, went to nursing school, did a dual degree in nursing and public health, and have had a variety of different experiences like Dr. Rodriguez in public health nursing throughout my career. Worked in corrections, worked in the emergency room for a very short stint, but have worked in maternal and child health and lots of different settings, STI clinics and so forth. Then I worked for the state of Texas for a long time, doing maternal and child health and infant mortality reduction. And the crux of infant mortality is really a race-based issue. And so there's no way to sort of divorce the elements of inequity that persist. I think that this is another example of that pervasive inequity and disproportionate burden in one specific community, that if you target marketing among African Americans so insidiously for years and years and years, it's no wonder that 80% of African Americans who use tobacco smoke menthol cigarettes. It's not because they like them more. It's because they've been predatorily targeted and marketed to. It's not the Newport classical music festival. It's the Newport Jazz Festival. Like there's been a very intentional just manipulation of the community's values and ethos and the beauty of the culture has been perverted for the purpose of big tobacco making money. And it's an insult to public health. It's an insult to our community as a whole. So I'm excited that we're talking about this today.
Excellent, excellent. Director Bond, Maritza Bond, Health Director,
Hi.
City of New Haven.
Yes,
Wilbur Cross, a proud Wilbur Cross graduate in elsewhere.
right. And it's such a pleasure to be with you, Alder Ficklin, as always, to be back, but also be back with my peers. I want to thank each of you for taking the time out of your busy days to talk about such an important issue. For me, as you know, Tom Ficklin, you've heard a little bit of about my background. Often I've been on the radio with you through the midst of the pandemic was the highlight of sort of some of our interviews and a little bit talking about our lead issue in our city. I've been in public health for over 2 decades, and I grew up in New Haven like Ebony, and being raised in the Fairhaven section, saw a lot of the different social drivers that impact the health of our community and in my community, and didn't know how to make sense of that. So, you know, being the first generation of students in my family to go to college at Southern Connecticut, I took this course called Introduction to Public Health because I heard it was an easy A. And the professor was Professor Dr. Quinn, who at the time was the New
Right.
Haven Health Director, and his
Right.
wife, Peaches, had a nonprofit organization. And the AIDS epidemic was rampant in New Haven, and we were asked to do a project and deliver meals to individuals to provide education and food because they were homebound, suffering from their illness. And so I declared a major because I felt like that was the way on preventing and also protecting the health of individuals. And as you know, our model for public health is prevent, promote, and protect the health of our residents.
Mhm.
And so it was so ideal for me to go into the field to do such a work. And then, you know, worked across the state. My first day at work in public health was on the unfortunate untimely death of Oteil Lundgren of anthrax. That was my first day of work in the Valley. So this urban girl was working in the Valley, and then from the Valley did a lot of work throughout the state, did a lot of advocacy. When you and I met in 2008 and 9, was doing a lot of advocacy around language rights and cultural, and did the equity piece about people getting healthcare in a language that they understand. Worked on a lot of policy issues around that, including developing the first medical interpreter training program in the state of Connecticut. And, you know, fast forward, became the health director in the city of Bridgeport, serving health and social services, which both Dr. Rodriguez and Ebony are in those capacities. The organizational structure is a little different than New Haven for certain, and Waterbury. And so, you know, when I was a health director in Bridgeport, we worked on a policy issue around tobacco and work on tobacco 21 efforts. And so we were one of the first cities in the state to pass an ordinance to increase the age to 21, and instituting that because we also license tobacco shops in the city. And so, you know, when we talk about the drivers to change, we need to have strong policies that support that. And so I just want to make sure that we recognize some of the strides that tobacco advocates across the country and in Connecticut have done to try to address and tackle this important issue that we are here discussing this morning, because we all know that tobacco is one of the leading causes of death and is completely preventable. And we have to institute measures that's going to address it. And as my peers have mentioned, there is a lot of predatory marketing. There is a lot of individuals that may have and have data that proves that individuals that have lesser of education status are prone to be at risk, are 2 times more likely to use tobacco, whereas also individuals from private insurance to Medicaid, and looking at some comparisons of those communities, And also, as mentioned already, is the youth and a lot of this marketing that's being done with the flavors and organic and these natural or additive free, farm to pack, and trying to really make it seem like it's environmentally friendly when really not really talking about the health effects that it does have on our community. And so it's important that we continue to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more about what we can do. But as you know, Alder Ficklin, I supported the local ordinance on tobacco recently, and we know that it was important for us to try to push that in our city. And we've seen the effects that it has had across the country and around the world of those who have banned it. European Union, United Kingdom, and Canada all have banned it. And then we've had Massachusetts and California who are leading the way in the United States. But yet in Connecticut, we haven't seen it. And we have seen articles, that ones that you sent me as well, is our president is not taking a stance on this vital issue. And so we need to continue to bring awareness and education so that people can be aware not only on the health effects, but what can they do as a community to stop this from affecting our community at large.
I just want to take a deep breath there. You guys have given me so much. Let's maximize these remaining 25 or so minutes in terms of, as you mentioned, Director Bond, where do we go from here? Where do we want to go from here? How can we go wherever we want to go from here? Is it mounting a campaign in terms of the next legislative session? Is it kind of again talking to your mayor and your alder people or your city council? What are some of the strategies, tactics? Because when I was thinking about this show, and here I'll shut up because I want to give everybody a chance to speak. I was thinking about, if I'm in your shoes, how do I modulate my frustration? Hearing everything that you've just mentioned, and being public health directors and health and social service folks, how do you modulate your frustration, knowing that people are dying that should not be dying? But I don't want to go too philosophical. Maybe we'll conclude on that. But from a tactical, practical standpoint, what kind of comes to your mind now in 2024, moving forward, knowing that this issue has been with us? Some would say since the cultivation of tobacco, let's not forget tobacco, King Tobacco and King Cotton. So I was just curious to hear from you. Where do you see some of your tactics or strategies? What do you need for people to jump on board to make this thing happen? You referenced President Biden. So I'm just curious, Aislinn, I'll start with you. Where do we go, as Martin Luther King had said, unfortunately, where do we go from here?
I think, I think in preparing for today's discussion, I was going back and doing a lot of reading and listening to podcasts and stuff. And I think I listened to one researcher who made a really good point that big tobacco was responsible when the lawsuits started happening and funds started being distributed. And this is even before the FDA took over the regulation of tobacco. When the Truth Campaign came out, when you remember, we were having all of those ads on television about, what's really in your cigarettes, and they were all funded by Philip Morris and, the big tobacco companies. But there was a lot of information that was conveyed, and I felt like people were talking about all the lies that had been perpetrated very openly. That, since vaping has come in, seems to have just disappeared. And I think, at least among people my age, and I would say probably the next 10 years younger than me, there's definitely a feeling or a belief that, number one, like, Dr. Bond was saying, that that there's a safer version of tobacco, that vaping is not that as bad as smoking a real cigarette. It goes back to that same kind of predatory marketing that, told you that smoking a cigarette with a filter in it was safer than smoking a cigarette without a filter. Even though we know that when you inhale with a filter, you're inhaling against an object that's making you pull harder and increasing your risk of emphysema and COPD. And we know that smoking a menthol feels like you're doing something healthy for your body because menthol is in, your mentholated rubs and in your cough drops. You feel like it's a cleaner kind of air that you're taking into your body, but it's actually an anesthetic that is allowing you to inhale deeper. And so we see higher rates of death from lung cancer among African-American men than we do in other populations. So all of the lies haven't really been unearthed. And I would say that a public awareness campaign not run by the tobacco companies would be a good first start, because I think I think that, the legislation that's being proposed and the Attorney General Tong's plan, I fully support. That's one route. But in the meantime, at the local level, can we get some of these, can we get the injustice up a little bit more? Can we get people's back up with a really robust public awareness campaign that's not dry and is just kind of calling out the companies for who they are and what they are, and just showing the injustice of it.
Dr. Rodriguez, I saw you gesture, so I want to capture you while I can.
Yeah, so I agree. One of the things as we're talking about this, I remember the Marlboro Man, right? He was the cowboy for Marlboro cigarettes, right? And so that will always be embedded in my mind. And it was geared to the man, the white man, and stuff like this. But to Aisling's point, when we begin to try to develop the campaign, we really have to do it culturally correct, right? Because if we're gonna target our media to the African American population, it really should be the African American talking about it, right? Because you have someone who's there, who lives it, breathes it, so to speak, and can relate to that population the same way if we do it to the Latino population. Because there's a lot of fear and hesitancy of others. You having a Caucasian to talk about it, and they're like, you don't know what I go through. You don't live my life, right? So when we talk about this media awareness and campaign and really targeted messaging, it has to be culturally competent, as Maritza had mentioned earlier, right? Because when you bring the lived experience of individuals who've smoked and now have health consequences, sometimes that's a powerful statement. We can't use media anymore. We can't use the newspapers and magazines like they did before. So it's all about going to meeting people where they are, going into that community, going into a town hall or an open forum to really deliver that message. Because I think for me, it's really delivering the message to the younger generation, because that's where I think the predatory advertising is happening. Because you have youth today who post-COVID have a lot of behavioral health issues, right? The depression came out, anxiety, social issues. And so they're very vulnerable, and they're looking to fit in, and they're looking to be a part of something. And this predatory advertising of the cigarettes, it's going to help you relax. But what people don't understand, when you take that cigarette, it decreases your oxygen level in your brain. You sticky mouth, you can't focus, you can't do, because your head is like a cotton ball. It's filled with so much junk. And it's really trying to deliver that message to the younger generation, because, my son will learn something in school and he'll come and goes, "Mom, did you know about that?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Oh, let me tell you." And he's so excited and animated. And that I'm like, okay, let's learn more about that. And so he reels me in on something new for science or whatever he learned in history. And that got me thinking, we can get to the younger children and really begin to have a very good message so that they can begin bringing that message to the peers and the family. That's one step. It's going to be multifactorial and multi-pronged effect, but it's really starting with the younger generation, because research shows it. They're very young, grade school, 6th to 12th grade is really like one of the major impacts, because they want to fit in. And I remember when I was growing up, it was cool to smoke. You did it like everybody else, right? And so that is still happening. And in order to do that, we have to deliver the correct message.
Director Shahid, Hillhouse Academics.
Yeah, so I think in moving forward with any campaigning, I think that we need to hold people within our community accountable as well. Not just in our community, but those who are representatives of us. And so while we talk about some of these major tobacco companies really investing in our community, like they actually have had and built a tie with the African American communities. being one of the largest investors in HBCUs, really, during the civil rights movement, offering large sums of money, to, the civil rights movements and in these organizations, kind of building a trust, with our community, even till now. If you look, when we're talking about the youth, culturally, we need to make a cultural shift change. When we're watching music videos, when we're looking at social media, what are the messages that's being put out there? The messages that are put out there for the young people is, you turn on a music video, you see somebody with a car, you see somebody flashing money, and you see somebody smoking. There's smoke everywhere, whether that's from marijuana or a cigarette. I think the message is we need to start holding some of these people who are supposed to be influential accountable, because they are putting out these messages, that this kind of behavior is okay. We need to cut ties with some of this. And I understand that, if a company's coming in and they're dropping off a couple $1 million to a campaign, yeah, it's beneficial, but is it really beneficial? Why are they investing in our communities? Dropping a couple of million, to them is okay when they're getting billions from you. A lot of African Americans, especially males, when they start smoking young, it has been proven, especially with the mentholated cigarettes, that they are lifelong users. And so when you have this particular population that is almost guaranteed to generate you funding, you're going to do that initial investment. So I think that along with campaigning, along with pushing some of our political candidates, we also need to push away and cut ties from some of this other activity as well. And so I think that that's just really important to, combine it all together to help us make a turn.
Definitely multi-pronged. Director Bond.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate all of the comments that have been shared already. I just want to add that when we're looking at sort of like the statistical figure of like who's being impacted, and youth has been the predominant group that we've all mentioned, is right now when we're looking at the data, 1 in 4 youth are using e-cigarettes on a daily basis. And almost 9 out of 10 are using the flavored e-cigarettes. And so we know that it damages lung tissue and all the other side effects that it can develop with long-term problems. One of the things that happened when the Board of Alders were trying to push this policy change, we had a lot of pushback. And being in and hearing the testimony, the main arguments came from the impact that it will have on small businesses. Again, back to this monetary tie. Banning the product will drive the black market and criminalize the product. So saying that menthol cigarettes were going to be more appealing, especially for youth, if it became illegal, and that it was going to disproportionately criminalize people of color as a whole. And the other argument was the argument between menthol and cannabis being legalized and not legalized. And so we know that it's a big push and it's a big fight. And we know that there's a long way before we get to where we want to. So what we could consider doing, and what I recommend, is I was looking into Stanford, and Stanford zoning just in July 2023 established new regulations on smoke shops, including that they cannot be situated within 3,000 feet radius of any other smoke shop or dispensary, or within 1,000 feet of a school, or smoke shop operators also were required to have a special permit to operate, approval by land use boards, and other restrictions around commercial districts. And I thought that that's a good avenue. I know that our Alder Furlow is creating a small group to talk about the issue that we're seeing in New Haven. What we're seeing in New Haven is that these smoke shops are now selling cannabis illegally. And so not only are we dealing with the menthol issue with the targeting the youth, but now they're, putting music in front of their businesses, selling clothes out of their businesses, trying to sell snacks out of their businesses, along with shelving the cannabis right in the visible eye of a youth. And that in the last few weeks, in the last 3 weeks, we've had to close 2 different smoke shops for illegally operating in our city. And so it's really critical that we, yes to the campaigns, yes to to policy, rezoning, doing, zoning is so critical. And we can talk about the disparities that exist around zoning and having too many McDonald's in our neighborhood and the food issues that we see in our community, but also as a community, right? Those that are listening right now and what role you can play is really talking to friends, family, neighbors about the health risk. Like, we all have accountability on this effort, along with the policymakers. We as health officials have a role, but you also have a role as well. And we can be, doing proactive measures like hosting workshops and seminars and public forum. Those that are clinicians being able to talk about it from the health effects. Those of you that are community organizers, having these conversations and really having petitions. Because as I illustrated when we were having this proposal at the local level, with an ordinance, we saw all the oppositions of the arguments. There was not enough arguments and petitions on banning it. And so it's important that we all be civically engaged, because we know that when we work together, we can create change. And it is very powerful, because at the end of the day, we are the ones voting individuals in,
Yes.
from a president to a governor to a local official. And so it's important that you know the power that you have with your voice.
We have about 12 more minutes, so let's kind of keep this communion going. Thoughts, reactions, next steps, fears. I'm tempted to say if you want to wave your magic wand, but that sounds kind of sexist. So let's say you're to wave your power and authority. But let's imagine some successes, but also talk about maybe some next practical steps or things you'd like to see happen. I don't want to call anybody. Would anybody like to raise their hand? I'll do the teacher role.
So we're in the process of working on New Haven Vision 2025 plan. As you know, that one is sunsetting, and we're working on Vision 2034. And so while those plans are underway, I sit on that committee. And so, of course, I think it's important for us to infuse that as an opportunity to looking at that as part of our master plan for the city. So that's one step that I was thinking about.
Someone's mentioned, rightfully so, Attorney General Tong. Should we ask him to, again, redeclare, hold a press conference? Should we ask him, because he's been, as well as a few other attorney generals, should we ask him to be more vocal?
So, I had the honor to be with him last week when we announced our opioid settlement funds. And of course, I pulled him to the side and I said, so are we going to tackle menthol ban next? And he says, I'm for it. He's like, we just really got to press the president. And so it goes back to this federal policy and the president really taking a stance on in a position on this vital issue.
And how about your local retailer associations? Should there be a discussion with them? Because as you referenced, Marita, they have felt threatened, and I noticed even when we had that hearing that their lobbyist was there. I won't mention the lobbyist's name, but you and I know him, so I was disappointed to see him, but understood his expertise, and they certainly had a good person. But again, I'm looking for it's the next 10 or 12 minutes, thoughts that you might have about some action steps, incremental or macro, that you would like to see happen, either under the auspices of your department or just under auspice of your mayor. Should the mayor do a proclamation? Should your aldermanic committee, your health and whatever your health and human services committee is, should they hold another workshop? I'm just looking for brainstorm some ideas just to put into the public marketplace.
So Alder, I think one of the pushbacks that's come out is that the impact, the blowback that we would see from a menthol cigarette ban would be just tremendous, and it would be too much for the economy to weather, and that we would have an underground market popping up, and that would disproportionately impact low-income communities that are that would be affected. I think that it's a little bit of a false narrative in that Canada has had a menthol ban for years and years, and they don't have an illicit trade there. We have our neighbors to the north, Massachusetts has had a ban for several years. I think it has impacted certainly the overall income from cigarette tax, or but if you think about the impact on economies of paying for uninsured people, or even those who are insured, to have cancer treatment, emphysema treatment, COPD treatment, that's a much more tremendous cost than the impact that such a measure would invoke.
That's right. Saving lives. Dr. Rodriguez, you're still here. Good to see you.
Yeah, I was just listening to Aizen because I thought about this the other day. I forgot, I think I was getting gas at the gas station. And I looked, and the price of a cigarette, it's like the box of cigarettes, like almost $14 with tax, right? And so what's sad is people will prefer to take the $14 on a 20 pack of cigarettes instead of food or prescription or something, right? So there's the addictive process in the mind. I need this before I need food or paying a bill. And for people who are heavily smokers, you know, you can go through a pack or two a day. I mean, it's an expensive habit. And the fact that, you know, to Aiden's point, you know, the tobacco industry does have a lot of money to throw. Kind of like the same thing what happened in the opioid settlement. We're going to give you millions of dollars, but then they find another way to kind of turn back around and change the narrative a little bit, right? And we're not putting it out there like we did, or use a different approach. And that's hard because I think it was Ebony who said it. You know, we have a lot of music industry actors, influencers who have a lot of power, or think they have a lot of power over our youth and entertainment, right? And it's trying to get them to be the voice of reason. How can we get them involved in this messaging? Because, you know, I look at the videos today, and I kind of, like Ebony said, music and cars and smoking and drinking and everything that we're trying to combat, they're making it seem like this is an everyday occurrence, right? And with the kids now not going outside to play like when we were younger, and I'm older now, but we used to go out and play before the lights went down. Now you have kids on social media, on playing games, and all that is being put into them. And so it's going to be challenging, but I think small steps and trying to get maybe some of these influencers that we might know, or people might know, to deliver that message will play a lot, right? Because when Oprah was doing her show, the book clubs, and this is what she wanted, had a lot of power at the time. We need to start bringing that back and really bringing it back to our youth, because again, they're the ones on that social media, and you got an influencer who does makeup or hair. Why can't we have an influencer to talk about the negative impact of this smoking and vaping and the menthol and stuff like that, right? So we have to be creative in our messaging and our marketing to combat this thing, right? And I love the fact that our Attorney General is really doing this ban, but as Maritza said, it has to come from the top. Our president really needs to push that driver, because then he pushes it down, right? We can try to push as much up as we can, but if the top tier is not doing what they need to do, we're almost running into this battle of where are we in the middle, right? And so individually as a town, we can't do it. I think collaboratively as a state, we can do it, and take those small incremental steps. I'd rather get a small victory than trying to go for this big arching, let it fail. I'd rather have small successions, you know, working, and bring more things to the table. But it's going to take time. But I think, you know, with all of us on board, and this becoming really a public health issue that affects everyone. I don't care. You know who knows somebody who smokes.
Yes.
I have asthma, and so when people next to me, I smell it, I end up doing it, right? So I think with us being the first message driver can help bring some of that out.
Excellent. Director Shahid.
Yes, I think in addition, ramping up our education campaigns as well. I think that we're doing a good job at educating about, you know, cigarettes or vaping, but I also think about some of those other products that have been introduced, you know, from other cultures, such as the hookah, which is a little different. So, you know, there, it's not even really, it's not filtered at all. It's literally just smoking tobacco in a pipe. I know well about hookah because it is something that, you know, is used in many, you know, Middle Eastern countries. They also call it hashish or, you know, these things. So people tend to think that it's healthier, right? When actually it's a lot worse because there are no filters for this. So doing some education on some of those, you know, products as well, I think, you know, will benefit, you know, the community at large. But I think I just wanted to take a just like a reverse, you
Please.
know, advertisement on. It was a top image in 1990 from Newport, and it basically said in this advertisement, "Alive with pleasure," right? And I think that that's very controversial now. Alive with pleasure.
Mm.
The way we are going, we are not alive with pleasure, right? We are riddled. It's almost like the American people have become, you know, we become a commodity for sickness. And so to be honest with you, by, you know, shoving down our throats these advertisement for cigarettes and, you know, McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's and all the fast food on every corners in a lot of our communities, we literally are not alive with pleasure. We are becoming sicker and sicker. And so therefore, instead of being alive with pleasure, we are dependent on all of these medications that are keeping us alive, right? Because of all these ailments within our community. So I think, you know, to our policymakers, to our, you know, president, I think it's time to invest your people, right? So that they can be alive with pleasure. So that, you know, we can be a competitive country again. I mean, a lot of countries who are taking the healthier approach are passing us by. And so we should, you know, not focus so much on just economic drivers, but really invest in the people that are here that are creating your economy. You want us to be alive with pleasure, not, you know, sicker and sicker. So I think that that's something that, you know, I really hope that we're able to contribute to, you know, as public health professionals, parents, you know, community activists. You know, I really just, you know, hope that, you know, they hear our message that we really would like to be, you know, alive with pleasure
Yes.
and not, you know, not sick.
Indeed. Director Bond.
You know, I actually agree with what my colleagues already said. I gave my recommendation sort of already, and so I don't want to belabor the
Okay.
point, but I think it's as we continue to, you know, as we wrap up this interview, because I'm looking at the time.
Yes.
I just want to, you know, thank my colleagues and, you know, want to urge our community to stay engaged with each of us. If you have ideas of what we could be doing, of how you can get engaged or how you can even be able to advocate for some of the rights, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I can hopefully speak for all of us when we say that we are in public service to serve you. And so hopefully we can be able to provide some further resources on how the community can be actively involved in this fight with us together.
We have about 3 more minutes, and I want to give everyone the last word. Give, you know, 90 seconds or a minute or so for your closing comments. But Director Bond, I want to follow up with you very briefly. Many folks know we've talked about the political systems locally, state, national, and in this case, I'm comfortable in asking you this question because you've actively participated in state government politics. You've been around the state. You've talked about issues. You've run for office. Share with folks a little bit. You still believe in the system. There are folks that don't believe in the system, but you believe in it. You've spent time working on it. You're involved with it now. I'm just curious. I know it's kind of a general question, but share with us how tough you think this battle might be, because we've talked about our dear president, and we know that the opposition is nothing that we want to support. But so the complexities of movement, of change, the complexities of social movements. I just wondered if you had any particular thoughts about that in your life moving forward in the position you're in now, and the experience that you've garnered in being involved with political campaigns.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
tough is this road that we want to this abolitionist strategy that we want to invoke?
Well, it's certainly going to be a fight. And I think that's why I started out with that this is completely preventable and education is so critical and knowledge has a lot of power. And as individuals are making life choices, really having that knowledge of how they can prevent from being sick. We know that system changes are very difficult. We have to be willing to fight, remain resilient. I was engaged in civic engagement beyond being a health official because of what I witnessed in our fight against the pandemic and how it was
Indeed.
politicized and the injustice that we saw. And social movement is necessary. And being disengaged is not an option. The minute that we're disengaged, then the opposition wins. And so it is important that we know the power that we hold when we're the ones electing people into offices. For me, yes, it's integral. It is down to the roots that is really hard to shake. You know how hard it is to kill weeds. And so it is important for us to remain involved, and I will continue to be involved as I see fit. I think that I know that I represent oftentimes people that don't have the courage or ability to know how to navigate the system. And so I'm very fortunate to have learned how to navigate the system and will continue to support and fight for that integrity and those values that I hold. And I'm right now thinking of someone who I admire, which is Reverend William Barber, and who has been a social movement moral fusion leader across our country. And I hope to lead by that example and be able to
Yes.
stay engaged.
Great. Harry, give me 90 more seconds. Aisling, 15 seconds of closing remarks, and then I'll go around.
Thank you. I appreciate this discussion because I think it sort of speaks to the very many layers. This is like an onion. Like if we even just work on advertising, work on policy, we're still just a couple layers into the onion. There's so many factors that impact this issue and competing priorities. Our priority obviously is public health. We're not business people. We have to bridge those gaps and make connections and colleagues across those gaps, because we really need to understand where other people are coming from and figure out a way to meet in the middle. So thank you for this discussion.
Excellent. Dr. Rodriguez.
Again, I thank you for the opportunity to be here, right? Because I think what I've seen from my colleagues is we're all invested. We all really are passionate about getting this message out there. And, just being able to, I want to look at my future, my children's future, and where they're going to be tomorrow. And hopefully it would be a smoke-free society. But it's going to take time, right? But I think with every step, and as Aisling had said, it's really working with people outside of public health, the movers and the shakers that can help us deliver that message, as well as get funding to do the work, right? Because everything's about funding. Sometimes we have some momentum going and then the funding goes away and we kind of have to pedal back a little bit. But this is a big thing that is not going to go away anytime soon. We've been fighting this years before. We're doing it today. We just have to think better for tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to what our colleagues are doing within public health, not just within Connecticut, but nationally, right?
Excellent.
Excellent.
Director Shahid, 30 seconds.
Sure. I would just like to tell people, in an age of information, I would say do your research. I implore, our people, to take back control over their health. I want them to be active. I want them to get involved and know that their voice actually matters.
Ladies, thank you so much. Thank you. Tremendous. Harry, thank you for those extra moments. And the struggle continues. And belated Happy Mother's Day for those of you that pertains to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is
You're
my
listening
rock.
to the Tom
Let's
Ficklin
get
Show
personal.
on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.